I'd rather create something that others criticize than create nothing and criticize others.
If you have high quality product behind the bar, it's like a weapon.
It's not about the figures. It's about who those figures are.
The Hospodpreneurs Podcast.
I'm gonna drink this beer.
Yeah, let's crack them.
With James Henderson.
After leaving her job as a middle school home economics teacher and then getting fed up after an 8-year stint in the university system, during which she was published in the National Mental Health Journal, Natalie Migliarini started an Instagram page called Beautiful Booze. That was in 2013. Now, through her media company with the same name, Natalie travels the world educating brand ambassadors on how to use social media effectively and has countless articles, recipes, and resources on her website. Instagrammable drinks have come up on the program before and usually inspire some passionate responses on both sides of the mark. This episode approaches that topic from another perspective, and I'm excited to share it with you now. Enjoy. Hello and welcome to the show, Natalie.
Hi, thanks for having me.
No worries at all. No worries at all. It's a pleasure to have you. As you know, the first question that I like to ask is, what is your crazy hospitality story?
I don't have anything super crazy, but I do have a interesting story because I didn't have a direct path into hospitality. I've done everything from being a middle school teacher to working on research grants at universities to getting laid off from that and really just starting to make cocktails as a hobby. And I was very interested in that because I was just interested in entertaining at home. I mean, sitting in a cubicle all day crunching numbers and doing research, I really needed an outlet beyond that. So I put a lot of time and energy into entertaining friends whenever I had free time or on the weekend. And that really started, making me more interested in spirits and cocktails and just like fun ways to entertain friends on the weekend. So that's when I started getting asked a lot for recipes. So I started a blog called Beautiful Booze, and then I started sharing those recipes.
Perfect. We're starting to move into what, but before we get into what you do, even if we can open up, have you got something funny, exciting, or strange that you've seen in the industry, maybe while you were learning about things? Because your background's a little bit different, and we're going to get into that in a sec.
Right. I think it's not something outrageous, but I just think I would be in so much awe when I would go into bars and bartenders were making like amazing egg white cocktails with so much foam. And I was just in awe of that. And I was thinking this is the most complicated thing I've ever seen. And those were kind of the skills I was trying to challenge myself to learn as a home bartender.
Yeah, fantastic.
So that's not outrageous, but it's just those amazing techniques that you see in bars that you're just, in awe of, like, oh my God, that's so amazing.
I like that. And I guess like a lot of listeners who earlier on in their journey would be potentially relating to that now, or if they're outside the industry, relating to how cool a lot of the presentation of drinks look. And those who are a bit more experienced might be thinking back to when they started learning about those things. But before I ask a bit more about Beautiful Booze, can you tell me why you do what you do?
Yeah, I think because of my previous jobs that I've had, like I said, I was sitting in a cubicle and I was very challenged at my job, and I saw immediate outcomes because I was always having to turn in all the goals that we met through the grants, but I really was missing something and I couldn't really put a finger on it, although I just became obsessed, like I said, when I was entertaining on the weekends and trying to figure out menus and drink pairings and cocktails. I just got totally obsessed with that. So I think that's really what led me when I got laid off, and I was like, I don't know what I want to do. I just said, what do I love doing like on the weekends? And I'm just going to take a mental break for a couple months before I go look for another job, just to be creative and do something different.
And did you find, because there's a cultural difference in the States versus other places in the world where people are really pushed to move towards something that they want to do. People are really encouraged in the States to go for things that they want. Did you find that really supported you, or did you find there was a lot of friction that was holding you back from doing what you wanted to do?
I think that it depends on who you're surrounded by. I felt as though everyone was telling me to get a real job, and I just wasn't focused on that. I had been doing a similar job for a really long time, like 12 years, and I just wanted to do something different. And I felt like it was a now or never scenario. And at that time, I didn't think, oh, this is something I can do as a job. And frankly, putting that, people may say, well, not everybody can just be laid off from a job and not have to worry about money. But at the time, I had worked in a job for 12 years. I had a lot of money saved up, and I really wanted to take a couple months of a creative break. I think looking from the outside, people are like, what are you doing? Like, you're getting up at 10 in the morning, making drinks, you're photographing them, putting them on Instagram. Are you depressed? Do you have some kind of problem because you got laid off? And it's like, no, I'm trying to look at other jobs. But then when it came down to it, I thought, well, I can always go back or find a similar job to what I was doing. But I just felt like the timing was right for me to go out and do something for myself, which I think a lot of times looks really selfish to other people.
Given that you've got qualifications in other areas, is that something that you recommend other people do, that they are qualified in another space before they try to become an Instagram, for lack of a better word, influencer?
I don't think so, because I really started from nothing. My job did not have anything to do with this job now. So I think some people do get bogged down because maybe they think they need schooling or they need some kind of training. I wasn't a bartender before this. I wasn't a social media guru. I didn't go to school for marketing. So I definitely think that learning stuff on your own and starting from zero, you're coming in with an open mind to certain situations, which I think can turn out better for you. For me, with cocktails, I was coming in at zero knowledge. And so I might experiment, and I did experiment with techniques and flavors that maybe someone trained in bartending might not do. And it's only because I was coming in at ground zero and I had no idea what I was doing. And so I think that even if you have no idea what you're doing, you can still find something that you're passionate about and just do it. The more that you do something, the more that you learn, the more skills that you have. So sometimes, having experience and skills is better sometimes than education. But obviously, education and learning about a topic is amazing as well, because I try to learn something new every day. And so I think that's definitely a benefit, but I don't think that it's required.
What about then, so maybe not required to move into that space, but what about as a plan B? You said you can always go back to what you were doing. Do you recommend people have that backup, that plan B, for if it doesn't work out for them?
I think it's good to have a plan B, but I noticed in this job, I really can't plan anything. And at the time when I decided to take this break, I was like 2 or 3 classes away from getting my master's degree in public health. And I just said, I can't take that anymore. Like, I can't deal with it. I'm done with it. And I just have no regrets. And people were like, you're so close to finishing your master's degree. Why don't you just do it? And I just said, there is no amount of energy that can make me get motivated to do it. So I do think that obviously to be able to have enough money to live, you do want to make sure that you're in a place where you can support yourself. So sometimes, having a part-time job or something to fall back on is ideal. Like I said, I had worked really hard for a really long time and saved a lot of money. So I did have something to fall back on. But I think there's always some kind of job open that you could go to if worse came to worse.
And for a lot of people, it's in the hospitality industry, which is cool to have an industry where that can be where we are. It's where we fall back on. It's the entire operation. It's the entire game. So I think that that's really cool. Can you tell us more about your background? So you used to teach home ec, and then it's come into, I'm moving towards, so listeners know the progression here. We're moving towards what it is that you're doing now.
So I grew up in North Carolina. I went to college there at NC State University, and I got a Bachelor of Science in Textile Apparel Management, which seems insane to me now. And I couldn't really find a job in that field, so I started teaching home ec, which was the closest thing because we did a actual couple lessons on sewing. So that's how that correlated. at all possible. And then I kind of moved into the higher university level. I moved to Minneapolis and I worked under several grants. I did a nutrition education grant that I was on and taught pregnant and parenting teens about healthy lifestyle and nutrition planning and budgeting for food. So that's really extended what I was doing with teaching. And then I moved to Seattle and worked at the law school at University of Washington, specifically working with juveniles and doing research on alternatives to incarceration, as well as some health research. So I've really focused on trying to create and help and do research on better outcomes for people living healthier lifestyles. So with my current job, I'm back at square one where I was teaching people how to have a more balanced lifestyle, and I'm struggling myself to make that happen with this kind of career change and all the travel that I do.
I think it's worth mentioning there when you were doing research that you were published.
Yeah, I was published in the Mental Health Journal, which was a huge deal for me and my career there. And the only reason that I left that job is because I was laid off and my boss basically had to force me out. So I would still probably be sitting there right now. I wouldn't be talking to you if I had never gotten laid off. And getting laid off was really a wake-up call that I wanted to do something else. So that's how I'm here now.
Yeah, excellent. So what is it that Beautiful Booze is all about now?
So Beautiful Booze really started as me wanting to learn more about cocktails, put recipes out as a home bartender that had beautiful photos attached, because I would always be looking for cocktails to serve at parties and events that I was having personally, and there wasn't that much stuff on the internet and the photos weren't amazing. So I was thinking, I just want to put something out there, that's beautiful, like when I look at a drink that I really want to make because it looks beautiful with my eyes. So I really started doing that, and I started making 5 recipes a week, posting it on my blog, Beautiful Booze, and posting it on my social media outlets. And that's really how it started, that simplistic thing. But now 5 years later, I've been doing this. It's grown more into a media company, social media company, where I'm teaching seminars, I'm training brand ambassadors, doing anything I can do to really push the impact for brands and people through social media.
How did you find you moved into more of an education space? How did you find that you were able to connect then with brand ambassadors or with the companies that then would educate the brand ambassadors?
I think within a couple years, 2 or 3 years, I started getting a bigger following on Instagram, and I started getting a lot of questions from followers as well as brands on how I did that. So when I had so many questions, I really thought there must be some kind of need for this kind of training and this kind of education within the industry. And so that's when, we started developing more educational programs, and I was getting asked to come do trainings for brand ambassadors as well as brands on how they could really step up their social media game.
So how can people step up their social media game?
Well, I have a whole education program on that, but just a little snapshot of that. I think what I've really focused on and what I've been trying to tell people is obviously social media is changing every day. Like Instagram's adding a new feature every day. So I get a lot of businesses saying, I'm on social media, now what? Maybe you have a photographer that's come in and let's just say you have the content. So now what? You're posting the content and you're unable to grow your audience, or things are slow, or the algorithm changed with Instagram and it's just not giving you the results. So I'm really focused on teaching like those tips and techniques where you can really take it next level beyond just posting the picture, and how you can engage with your community and like key influencers around your community to really step up your social media to the next level and really utilizing it.
Are your courses applicable to people just in the industry or outside, or tell us a bit more about that?
I would say everyone. I mean, I'm geared towards bartenders restaurants, hotels, brands, brand ambassadors, people that are cocktail enthusiasts, because that's where I'm coming from. But I've definitely had requests from other industries because I do think that these tips and techniques really carry over.
And so you mentioned you're an agency. Do you do that in-house? I'm just wondering myself because there might be some listeners out there who are interested too. Do you guys do it yourself or do you just educate on it?
Well, we have an agency called Little Lane Media, and Little Lane is really there to show a behind the scenes of what Beautiful Booze does, as well as we actually do a lot of content for brands and hotels and bars that never gets put on Beautiful Booze because it's just another part of what Beautiful Booze does. And we also run other companies' social media accounts. So that's another thing we offer because I've been able to do it with Beautiful Booze. So we just formed Little Lane that does everything, shows all of our work behind the scenes, what we're doing. It has the education component, the social media component, and the management component of what we do.
When your channels really started growing, did you find that it was spiking? Like, was it jumping up or was it really slow, gradual increase in your followership? How did that happen?
Well, I think people ask me all the time when they see my account or they just met me or I met someone in a bar and they go follow me on Instagram. They're like, oh my God, you have over 80,000 followers. Like, how did you do that? Well, here's the thing. I've been doing this for 5 years. So you may see accounts that try to grow that overnight. I don't think that's possible. I've been doing social media all day, every day for 5 years. So I've seen like the different changes Instagram's implemented, and it's obviously it started out growing faster than it is now. But at the same time, there was different publications that I was in about who to follow for cocktail accounts like BuzzFeed and stuff like that early on that really pushed my numbers up. So like getting featured on bigger accounts or getting featured through an article are things that you can do to make your audience grow.
Yeah, awesome. And when your account did start growing or when your profile started growing, how did you identify who your audience was?
Well, through the blog, I was getting a lot of demographic info on what my audience was. I mean, Instagram didn't release that till much later.
Yes.
So I didn't have those specific demographics for Instagram. But when I had an audience that was starting to grow, I started interacting with those people and I could see, where they were from. I would talk to them and chat with them and engage with them. And that's kind of how I was figuring out my audience on Instagram, but I think there was a crossover with the blog. So I was able to see where my audience was and like what that demographic was.
Totally. So it was incredibly handy having a blog because those who don't have a blog or a website, they're not necessarily able to identify that without it. But you mentioned Instagram's changed that as well. So, I mean, there are all these factors that change in the process.
Right. Now it's much easier. If you have a business account with Instagram, you're going to be able to see those demographics. Yeah. You can see everything with Facebook and everything with Twitter as well.
Yeah. So it's good now, but it would have been much harder a couple of years ago.
Yeah, 4 or 5 years. 4 or 5 years ago. And honestly, when I first started, I wasn't like looking at that information until brands started requesting that when they wanted to work with me. So that's when I started putting together like a press kit with all that demographic information.
Yeah, fantastic. So can you tell me more about what you're learning about now? What is it that you're exploring?
So what I'm exploring now is I try to take a lot of opportunities that come to me on things that are challenging that I would have never thought that Beautiful Booze would be doing. For example, on Friday, I did a bar pop-up at a speakeasy in Mexico City, which is something that is very challenging for me because I haven't worked behind a bar that much at all, really. Only a couple pop-ups. I've had one in Brooklyn, and then I had one in Las Vegas recently. And so before that, I'm just not used to being behind the bar making cocktails at volume. So what I'm trying to do is create spaces while I'm traveling where I can partner with bars and brands to go in and have like a 2-hour pop-up. That way I can make drinks and improve my skill set behind the bar, but also meet people that I've interacted with on Instagram or social media.
Excellent. How do you get that conversion? Because I know it's incredibly hard to convert digital traffic into a physical audience. How do you go about doing that?
Oh, well, I'll say I'm going to a place and I have people that contact me and give me recommendations. And I've also had people reach out to me and say, do you want to meet up for a drink? And I also have a lot of bartenders that reach out to me when I say I'm going to a place and say, stop in for a drink. And if someone invites me, I almost, unless I'm on like a massive press trip, I almost 100% will go to that bar if I get invited.
Awesome. It's obviously a good way to be. I mean, it's another way to engage with your audience offline, because there are ways that you talk about obviously online, but I think that offline, particularly in hospitality, it's an underrated space. It's underrated to the broader community, but in hospitality, it's what we focus on, that one-to-one connection with a patron.
Right. And I think for me, because I'm digital, but also because I've been on the road for 3 years without a home. So it's really important for me to be able to meet people with a common interest face to face. Otherwise, I'm very alone. So even when I did spend like 2 years ago, 3 months in Australia, so I met so many people that are cocktail enthusiasts, bartenders, etc. I would have never been able to meet ever without social media.
Yeah. What innovations have you seen taking place right now? Not necessarily around the technical aspect of bartending, but let's look at the visual or the digital presentation.
Yeah, for me, I think it's so interesting from the digital point of view that you have access to see what bars are doing all over the world. I think that's a total game changer. Like, that's insane to me. I also think it's interesting to see what people are putting out on Instagram, just given like what is in season. It's always interesting to see what people are putting out in, say, like Australia, where they're having all kinds of fresh fruits and things available at the moment, and we're like in winter. So it's interesting to see that. I think that just trying to transition what you were talking about early from the actual digital side of it into some of those face-to-face interactions. And that's really why I've started doing more of these pop-ups, because I want to be able to interact with people more. And I think it can become a frenzy about constantly being on social media and constantly getting the best pictures and stuff like that. But I think people are also showing in a more organic way their real lives, more than just manicured photos. So that's like for me from a social media side. But I also think it's just interesting to see what you can find out through social media, just like what glassware people are using and how people are influenced by different glassware that I'm putting up, or different bar tools that I put up, or garnishes or techniques. Like, I saw a bartender that had like a clarified cocktail, and I was like, I want to try to do that. It was the same thing where I saw a bartender in real life that did a foam cocktail, and I was like, I want to teach myself how to do that. So I think there's huge learning opportunities out there that wouldn't be possible without social media, just because of the access. You have access to so many different kinds of people from so many different places. I could say there's a bunch of bar trends going on with non-alcoholic drinks and cocktails and things like that. But for me, coming from the social media side of it, it's just, I don't know if it's just because I travel all the time, I'm not like around a ton of people or what, but I'm really trying to take it next level with creating those bonds through social media. I see more and more people being able to connect that way.
Yeah. How, on a more technical level, how are you going about converting that traffic? Is it just hosting an event? Is it literally just hosting an event and saying, I'm going to be here? Or is there a certain way that you're going about doing that?
So overall, from how I've created this into a business, well, how I usually do it is I work with brands to run sponsored posts on my Instagram account. A brand will send me a bottle of alcohol, and I will use that to make a beautiful booze type cocktail. So if you go onto my Instagram account, there will be some sponsored posts, and that's how I can really keep doing this full time. Beyond that, I have started doing these events. A lot of events like bartending competitions, I'll get called in to cover those on my social media site, and I'll meet a ton of people through that. But also with the pop-ups, I've started doing those in key markets where I have contacts that can help me set those up. And I just put out stuff on my social media. And like I said, when I'm going to different places around the world, I put up an Instagram story, say I'm going here. Do you have any bars to recommend? A lot of people reach out to me, a lot of bartenders, and I find that when I ask them what are the best spots to go to, they always have the answer. So through sponsored posts and events and covering different bartending competitions and doing the social media trainings and running other people's social media accounts and doing consulting, that's really how I'm right now using and monetizing my social media accounts and blog and the whole Beautiful Booze and Little Lane Media.
Yeah, it's good to know because there are obviously people out there who are doing similar things in the space and they might be wondering how to monetize their platform. So it's obviously interesting to hear someone who's done it. It's super valuable information for anyone listening. Plus, even businesses who want to take bits of that, maybe for their venue or for themselves, to be building business, monetizing in another way.
And that's really how I started. And when I say access to brands and companies, a person like me that would never have access to something like that, that's how I started monetizing it and working with brands, because I had access to reach out to them through social media. But also when I do a seminar that's focused on helping bars and restaurants and hotels really monetize their social media, it's more about creating influential communities because there is a location. Like I'm located in different places all the time, but I understand how powerful social media can be when you're at one location and you can really build a community.
That's something that we could discuss is the trade-off because, you know, without traveling, you also don't have the exposure to other markets, other styles and tools and techniques that people use. So the viewership, the listener base, the eyeballs online are obviously much larger. The market is much larger because the world is so much bigger online than it is at one particular city or one particular location. So that's the trade-off to consider because people in this industry do travel a lot. They jump around different bars. They travel around Europe or America or the world bartending, and they build their own communities and audiences. And what they don't really consider a lot of the time is that they can do something with that now. They can convert that network into something that's really powerful. And that's something that I want to get people who are listening considering because it is such a powerful network in this industry because we meet so many incredible people, famous people, powerful people, even just interesting people, you know, they don't have to be famous or powerful, but there are some really incredible people that we meet in this industry. And I want to make that salient to every listener. So it's cool to hear that. It's cool to hear that trade-off and discuss that with you. So Natalie, how do you handle competitors? So I want to open that up a little more because obviously there are so many users on these platforms that you use. Do you consider them competitors or do you consider them potential partners, or how do you look at other people doing the same thing as you?
I think that for me, because Beautiful Booze is so unique and it's from my point of view and I'm doing easy cocktails that you can make at home. And I would like to say that I was one of the first people doing this because I didn't see anyone doing that. And that's why I really started Beautiful Booze. So I don't look at any other accounts that seem to be like mine. I don't know of any out there that are. When I see other people doing similar things, it seems to me like they have their own unique take and own unique style. So I definitely think there's a place for everyone that wants to be within the community. So I don't really look at it as competition. As far as partnering, I'm expanding Beautiful Booze or trying to expand Beautiful Booze in a different direction every year. And so I haven't done that many partnerships, although I've met a ton of people and done a bunch of different panels and speaking engagements on social media with different people. For example, one of my favorite people is actually from North Carolina and his name's Bob Peters. He's a bartender from Charlotte. So I've enjoyed partnering with him on things because we both bring different strengths to the table. I'm the home bartender. He's an actual bartender, but he's a consultant now. So I think it's great to meet people in real life where we're doing similar things. We're passionate about the same things, but we're able to learn from each other.
Yes, I'd love to meet Bob. That sounds awesome.
Yeah.
Do you have a mentor or someone that you've learned from? It sounds like you've just done a lot of it yourself and you've tested a bit of this and tested a bit of that and then you've found it's worked. But have you learned from someone, or are there any resources that you've consumed or that you'd recommend other people consume?
I mean, I would love to put a bunch of different resources on paper and say, this is what's helped me. But I think I've learned by trial and error. When I got laid off and a couple months in, I decided, I'm going to try and see if this works, because I literally saw so many food bloggers and so many people putting out food content when I first started. And they weren't chefs, right? They were just like passionate cooks. And I was like, I'm going to be that passionate home bartender. And so I didn't have anyone to look to, because when I was online trying to research different things, I couldn't find anybody that was really doing what I was trying to achieve. Some of the food bloggers were doing cocktails along with their food. So I was kind of looking at what they were doing and how they were putting up recipes and trying to work with brands, if that makes sense. And I just kind of went on that track with just the cocktails. But when I decided I'm going to try to see if I can make money doing this, I have no idea how, and I have no idea what I'm doing. And I said, if this is going to be a full-time job for me, then I'm going to work nonstop, which I would not. There are so many resources and so many people that you can reach out to for help. I would not work that many hours, but for me at that time, I was able to. So, I would sit there and try to figure out Twitter for a week. And then the next week, I would try to figure out Facebook. And so I did read a lot of information online, but I don't have any specific resources that stick out. Unfortunately, I'm just trying to learn as I go.
Yeah, and I guess that's what we all really ultimately do. And then we sometimes find different resources, whether they be people or books or websites or whatever, to help steer us for guidance in some way. What's your biggest challenge right now?
I think it's just like trying to take on every opportunity and try to just grow the business. So that's very challenging for me. I wasn't a person that from a very young age said, I'm going to own my own business. Like, I'm going to be a business owner. Some people just come out at 6 months, 2 years old, and they're saying, I'm going to do this, and then they do it. I'm just from a small town in North Carolina. I never thought that was even a possibility for me. I never thought I would have any of these opportunities, and I did not think that I had it in me to make it work. So the challenge for me is growing that, as well as trying to grow more video presence. We've started doing more video, and I'm just going to try to focus on building a YouTube channel just as more of a resource where different things that we're talking about here today, I can really expand on that so people get more of a personal approach, and it's more, again, than just a minute clip on Instagram or just a beautiful photo.
What is it that you want to ultimately turn Beautiful Booze into? Where do you want the business and yourself to be?
I wish I had the answer for that. I am so blown away by opportunities that I've gotten up to this point. I feel like I wake up every day and I don't know what's going to happen. So trying to put all of that together to be like, I want to be here in 5 years, it's hard for me, because from the start of Beautiful Booze, I really could not see the future. I could only see one day at a time. And it's really because I hit a really dark place when I got laid off from my job. And that's really why I started Beautiful Booze. And when I got laid off from my job, I was like, it's really hard for me to see a future. And so as I've grown Beautiful Booze over the past 5 years, I've tried to use that as a philosophy, because I've been traveling nonstop for 3 years. The first 2 years of Beautiful Booze, I was in Seattle. And, I make a ton of mistakes, and a lot of bad stuff can happen when you're traveling and when you're trying to run a business at the same time. And for me, just trying to focus on what is in the present has really helped me mentally. So I would love to, and I think it is essential to have some kind of mentor and to have like goals for yourself. And I do have long-term and short-term goals. Like, I want to grow the business and I want to have a better video presence. And there's a lot of things that I want to improve on, but I also am essentially taking it day by day.
I like the honesty in your answer, because a lot of people try to convince not just other people, but themselves that they know what they want. And not everyone does. It's hard to work out what it is exactly that you want and where you want to go and how you want to build things. So I appreciate the honesty in your answer. Saying that you don't know, that's a good answer in itself.
Right. And in addition to that, I want to say also through this experience, I've learned that I've had things that I've always wanted to do with my life, X, Y, and Z, whatever they may be. And sometimes it just does not happen like that. And something will come up on a random Wednesday that changes your whole entire life. And you've just got to try to pick up the pieces and move on from it. So don't be so hard on yourself for everything not working out perfectly. Life is not perfect. And sometimes you think you're going in one direction and you go into a whole nother direction. And it's okay, because in the end, you realize I'm a happier person. I should be doing this. And if I did not get that kick in the ass previously, I would still be sitting here saying, why did this happen to me?
Yes. I have one last question for you today, Natalie.
Of course.
Who would you like to hear on the show next?
Oh my God. There's so many people I would love to hear their story, but I would be really interested in hearing somebody like Margarita Mom. Sorry, Mom. I don't know if you've had her on, but I think she's in Australia. She's done a lot of amazing things with her account. I've met her in person and she's really great. And I've had a one-on-one with her when I met her in person, but I would love to hear her thoughts and her point of view and how her story really got going.
And that's Margarita Mom?
Yeah, Mom.
Yeah, I'll have to reach out.
Yeah, but also coming from the U.S., I would also love to hear Bob's story, because he's had a lot of different avenues he's gone in, and he's transitioned to more of a consulting position now. So,
well, a lot of our listeners are in the States, so it's worth having a chat. Obviously, we've done the same today. But I want to thank you very much for being on the show. It was awesome having a chat, and I'm looking forward to connecting again soon.
Yes, thank you so much.
The show today was produced by Angus Brennan. If you'd like to know more about hospopreneurs, for advice, insights, and extra content, find us at hospopreneurs.com. Thanks for listening.